Welcome to the debate. What if the ultimate value of money isn't in how well you can protect it, but, how fast you can actually deploy it?
It's a massive question. And, well, today is April 29, 2026.
Right.
If you were to walk through the lobby of the Venetian in Vegas right now, you'd see, thousands of attendees packing up their hardware wallets. The Bitcoin 2026 conference is officially wrapping up.
But the energy in Vegas isn't really dissipating, is it? It's just shifting down the strip. Tomorrow, over at the Paris Hotel, the XRP Las Vegas event takes over.
Yeah, literally moving from one venue to another.
Exactly. And this physical transition, it perfectly mirrors this massive ideological and technological shift we're witnessing in the broader financial space. We're looking at a fundamental divide in how the future of cryptocurrency is defined.
We really are. Are we building a financial system anchored by a foundational, store of value architecture? Or is the future fundamentally about high-speed, real-world utility?
Right, that's the core of the source material we're looking at today. It contrasts the underlying mechanics of Bitcoin and XRP as this next phase of the bull market begins.
Right. It asks us to examine this core tension. Does a digital asset derive its supreme value from its immutability and deliberate pacing, or from its sheer velocity?
Precisely. And my position today is that high-speed utility and low-cost mechanics are the absolute necessary evolution. If crypto is going to survive, it has to function as the world's financial plumbing.
And I'm going to argue that a pristine, unassailable store of value remains the superior primary purpose of digital assets. Transactional speed is, it's distinctly secondary to foundational wealth preservation.
Let's lay out the groundwork here, starting with the physical reality of the tech. To me, cryptocurrency simply must evolve from a static asset into an active mechanism for moving capital. We are looking at a stark technological contrast. The XRP ledger settles transactions in, 3 to 5 seconds, and it does so for fractions of a penny.
True. The speed is undeniable.
Right. But this isn't just an arbitrary speed upgrade. It's an engineered solution to a highly specific $150 trillion problem, the agonizingly slow and expensive world of cross-border payments.
But you're framing Bitcoin's design as a limitation when...
Well, let me just finish the thought on Bitcoin's architecture. You're looking at a network that requires 10 to 60 minutes for confirmation, with fluctuating fee markets. That makes it highly impractical for high-volume movement of capital.
Impractical for microtransactions, maybe.
Impractical for modern commerce. That architecture inherently relegates Bitcoin to being a passive digital vault. But historically, money derives its true value from how efficiently it moves. If the system can't use an asset to settle global trade instantly, its utility is capped.
Okay, but you're looking at a 10 to 60-minute confirmation time as a flaw. It's not a flaw. It's a necessary thermodynamic feature of a totally secure, decentralized network.
How is waiting an hour a feature?
Because absolute cryptographic certainty takes time, right? It requires energy. To achieve a global consensus without some central coordinator, you need a block time that allows the entire global network of nodes to synchronize.
Sure, but at what cost to utility?
But look at what XRP is actually doing. When we look at XRP's positioning as this high-speed rail for banks, what we're really seeing is just a technology that optimizes the existing legacy system. It makes the current banking infrastructure, slightly faster and cheaper.
It's more than slightly faster.
But true digital scarcity, digital gold, provides a fundamentally new economic anchor. It's a sovereign wealth layer entirely independent of traditional banking speeds. And that is a far more revolutionary purpose than just upgrading a bank's wire transfer software.
Let's drill into the actual physics of moving that wealth, though, because sovereign wealth means nothing if you can't efficiently deploy it when markets shift.
I disagree that you can't deploy it.
But using Bitcoin's base layer for high-frequency global trade, it's like trying to use a fleet of armored trucks to deliver individual text messages.
That's a bit of an exaggeration, don't you think?
Not really. Yes, it's highly secure, but the friction destroys the velocity of money. If a multinational corporation has capital locked in a 60-minute confirmation window, or worse, waiting hours during network congestion, They can't lend it, stake it, or leverage it.
It's secure during that hour, though.
But it's dead money. And in global finance, a liquidity trap of even an hour represents a massive opportunity cost.
Look, I challenge the whole premise that base layer speed is the ultimate metric here, or that a 60-minute window is a quote-unquote liquidity trap. We have to consider what is actually being moved.
What do you mean?
When a sovereign wealth fund transfers $500 million across the globe, waiting 60 minutes for mathematical irreversible finality is incredibly fast. Let's compare that to SWIFT.
SWIFT is terribly slow, yes.
Exactly. Final settlement there takes days, involves multiple intermediary banks, carries massive counterparty risk. Bitcoin eliminates all of that entirely. So we have to ask, does optimizing a base layer for fractions of a penny merely cater to impatient corporate entities?
Impatient? They're trying to run a global economy.
But XRP is hyper-optimized for the convenience of institutional balance sheets. Bitcoin is optimized for survivability. A 3-second settlement is fantastic for a quarterly earnings report, sure, but it doesn't represent the profound paradigm shift of an asset that cannot be censored by those exact same corporate entities.
But those corporate entities are the ones actually moving the $150 trillion. You can't just wave away the current financial system and say, well, Bitcoin is for survivability. If you want to replace SWIFT, you have to actually solve the mechanical inefficiencies.
You can solve them on Layer 2 networks, though. But the base layer matters. Take the Nostro and Vostro accounts. Right now, banks have to pre-fund accounts in foreign currencies all over the world just to facilitate trade. Trillions of dollars just sitting dormant.
Right.
XRP's architecture is specifically designed to eliminate that. By acting as a real-time bridge currency, it ensures capital isn't locked in transit or trapped in pre-funded accounts. It moves instantaneously. So when you say an XRP just caters to impatience, I'd argue it fundamentally restructures global capital efficiency. Okay, it improves capital efficiency within the fiat system, absolutely. I won't deny that pre-funded Nostro accounts are wildly inefficient, but you are still talking about moving fiat currency from point A to point B using a digital token as a temporary conduit. And that's highly valuable.
It is, but it's a very different value proposition than providing a non-sovereign monetary asset. Bitcoin isn't trying to make moving the US dollar to Japan slightly more capital efficient. It is providing an alternative to the US dollar and the yen entirely.
Which brings us perfectly to how infrastructure is actually being built right now, especially looking at the regulatory realities of 2026. Because corporate adoption isn't just about marginal efficiency, it's about fiduciary duty.
The regulatory landscape has certainly shifted.
Exactly. Look at the recent passage of the Clarity Act by the U.S. Senate. The legal cloud that hung over XRP for years hasn't just dissipated, it's been legislatively vaporized.
The regulatory clarity has been a massive tailwind. Yes, I'll grant you that.
But think about the mechanism of that tailwind. Once the Clarity Act removed the threat of SEC litigation, it legally unlocked fiduciary gates. A major Korean bank couldn't touch tokenized bonds on a legally ambiguous ledger because their risk models wouldn't allow it.
Right.
But now they can. We're seeing real-world utility, like those tokenized bond settlements in Korea, happening specifically because the asset is fast, cheap, and legally clear. Plus, we cannot ignore the ESG factor.
The environmental mandates.
Yes, XRP was designed to be carbon neutral from day one. It doesn't require the massive energy-intensive mining farms that Bitcoin needs. For modern institutions bound by strict ESG mandates, XRP is the viable green choice. They literally cannot integrate Bitcoin at the base layer without violating their own internal energy rules.
I will readily acknowledge XRP's impressive ESG compliance. And frankly, the legal clarity achieved this year is a milestone for the whole industry.
It changes everything.
It does. And, the launch of the XAO DAO certainly pushes the XRP ledger toward decentralization, putting governance into the community's hands rather than just a single corporate entity.
Exactly.
But let's look mechanically at the primary utility driving this institutional adoption you're so excited about. XRP serves predominantly as a bridge asset. Right now, a massive driver of its utility is the integration of the RLUSD stablecoin, right? Which just hit, a $1.56 billion market cap?
Yeah, it's a vital piece of the ecosystem.
It is. But look at the inherent tension there. The ecosystem is relying on a fiat-backed stablecoin to provide the actual cargo that the network transports.
I wouldn't call it tension, it's synergy.
But institutions aren't necessarily holding XRP for its monetary premium. They are using it to move tokenized dollars. That means XRP is fundamentally tethered to fiat utility. Bitcoin, on the other hand, remains completely self-contained. It doesn't rely on being a bridge for legacy fiat to justify its existence. It is the cargo and the rails all at once.
I think that fundamentally misunderstands the relationship between the bridge and the cargo. You call RLUSD the cargo, and that's accurate, but XRP is the ocean.
The ocean?
Yes, think of XRP as the physical shipping lane and RLUSD as the container ship. You don't value the ocean based on the water itself. You value it based on the trillions of dollars of economic activity that can seamlessly glide across it without friction.
Interesting analogy, but
As the adoption of RLUSD grows, as more tokenized bonds and stablecoins are issued on the ledger, the demand for XRP as the underlying liquidity layer, the gas that powers these cross-border swaps, actually increases. Being the ultimate, frictionless bridge between the legacy system and the decentralized future is an incredibly strong position.
okay, but if the value of the ocean is only defined by the fiat cargo traversing it, what happens when central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, build their own oceans?
Well,
If the primary utility is acting as a conduit for dollars, and the Federal Reserve eventually issues a programmable dollar that settles instantly on its own proprietary rail, the bridge becomes obsolete. Bitcoin's value proposition is completely insulated from that risk because it isn't competing on transaction speed. It's competing on absolute scarcity.
But XRP doesn't just compete on speed. It competes on an economic model directly tied to that massive utility. And this transitions us nicely into the scarcity mechanics.
Okay, let's hear it.
The speed and utility of XRP directly impact its supply mechanics in a way that rivals Bitcoin. First, there's a hard cap of exactly 100 billion XRP. No more can ever be minted. But more importantly, let's look at the deflationary mechanism.
The transaction burn fee.
Exactly. Every single transaction permanently destroys a tiny amount of XRP to prevent ledger spam. And it's not like Ethereum, where fees are paid to validators and recycled. It is mathematically erased. Just this past March, during high traffic days driven by these institutional use cases, the daily burn rate spiked by over 300%.
It's a spike. Sure, but
it creates macroeconomic gravity. The more the network is used by banks, the more the underlying asset becomes scarce. Combine this with the massive supply-side tightening from Wall Street right now. We have over $1.44 billion in spot ETF inflows actively sucking up tradable supply into cold storage. You combine hard cap scarcity, dynamic burn mechanics, and massive volume, you have an economic model more responsive than Bitcoin's static 4-year halving cycles.
Wait, walk me through that. You're presenting the burn rate and the hard cap as if they exist in a purely algorithmic vacuum. You're completely glossing over the whale problem and the reality of the Ripple escrow safeguard.
The escrow is public and predictable.
But we have to look at the mechanics of the circulating supply. Years ago, Ripple locked roughly 55% of the total XRP supply into a series of smart contract escrows. On the first of every month, 1 billion XRP is mechanically released.
Right, to ensure predictable liquidity.
But look at what happens next. The data from early 2026 shows that Ripple typically relocks 60% to 80% of that released XRP, sometimes 800 million tokens, back into new escrows. To a Bitcoin purist, centralized escrow management sounds like a traditional central bank by another name. They are actively managing the money supply to prevent market shocks.
It prevents a sudden market flood, yes. That predictability is a feature, not a bug, when you're trying to onboard risk-averse institutions.
It prevents a flood, but it fundamentally means the system is heavily reliant on institutional lockups to maintain its scarcity. If roughly 82% of retail wallets hold 500 tokens or less, the actual distribution is heavily skewed. The supply is concentrated and managed by a corporate entity's escrow schedule.
That's a bit reductive.
It fundamentally lacks the organic thermodynamic scarcity of Bitcoin. Bitcoin's scarcity wasn't created by a founding company locking away half the supply and deciding how much to release each month based on partnership needs. It's guaranteed by pure mathematics and the global expenditure of energy.
I hear you on the escrow concerns, but you're looking at it in a historical vacuum and ignoring the mathematical constraints. Yes, Ripple holds a significant amount in escrow, but they are bound by the exact same cryptography as the retail user holding 500 tokens.
But they control the release.
They cannot unilaterally change the hard cap, though. They cannot print more XRP. The escrow was a necessary mechanism to establish trust in an asset designed for global banking, a sector that demands structural guarantees, not unpredictable mining shocks or massive hash rate fluctuations.
Maturing, perhaps, but the structural legacy remains.
But the market is validating the structure. Wall Street isn't worried about the escrow. They're looking at the utility. The $1.44 billion flowing into spot ETFs in just the last few months shows traditional finance is confident in the math. They're confident in the 3 to 5 second settlement.
They see the utility, absolutely.
They see a network that is carbon neutral, legally clear thanks to the Clarity Act, and practically capable of handling the bandwidth of global trade. To me, this combination makes XRP the undeniable architecture for the future of finance. A heavy, slow vault simply cannot serve as the rails for a high-velocity global economy.
Wall Street's confidence is certainly a major factor. I won't deny that the XRP ledger offers remarkable technological efficiency. It does exactly what it was engineered to do. But we must rigorously distinguish between a highly efficient payment rail and a foundational shift in the nature of money itself.
They aren't mutually exclusive.
Maybe not, but a network that requires monthly escrow management to stabilize its supply and relies on fiat-backed stablecoins like RLUSD is ultimately an extension of the legacy financial system. It's a much better, faster version of it, undoubtedly. But Bitcoin's deliberate pacing, its absolute decentralization, and its unmatched status as the pristine digital vault, that remains the foundational achievement of the crypto era.
It really is fascinating to see where our perspectives align and where they completely diverge. We clearly have a mutual agreement that institutional adoption, particularly through these massive spot ETF inflows, is rapidly changing the baseline for both assets.
Absolutely. The $1.44 billion in XRP spot ETFs and the staggering institutional holdings in Bitcoin ETFs, it shows the traditional financial world is no longer experimenting on the fringes. They're committing massive capital to both philosophies.
Yet our core disagreement remains untouched, doesn't it? Whether the ultimate value of a digital asset is derived from its ability to store wealth immutably over time, or, its ability to move wealth instantaneously across the globe.
And perhaps the global economy is complex enough that it inherently requires both architectures. It needs an unassailable vault to protect foundational wealth from systemic fiat risks. And it needs instantaneous, low-cost financial wires to facilitate the daily pulse of international trade.
That complexity is exactly why we need to view this through multiple perspectives. As regulatory milestones like the Clarity Act firmly take hold, the tension between algorithmic scarcity and high-speed utility isn't going to resolve neatly. It's only going to deepen as adoption scales.
We definitely have a highly nuanced financial landscape ahead of us.
For sure. Tomorrow morning, as the sun comes up over the Paris-Las Vegas hotel, a new set of arguments about velocity, stablecoin integration, and utility will take center stage, right on the heels of the digital scarcity debates down the road at the Venetian.
Two hotels, two entirely different visions of what money needs to be in the 21st century.
Exactly. And we leave it to you, the listener, to decide which philosophy, the unassailable vault or the high-speed rail, will truly dominate the next era of decentralized finance.